In a couple of days' time, I'm off to Switzerland to visit the annual Biel Chess Festival, where I'm going to be the chief commentator. There's a huge open tournament there, but also a closed tournament with 6 invited players, and it's a very interesting mix. We have established players such as Etienne Bacrot from France, and a younger generation as well. For example, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave from France, only 22 years old. Jan Nepomniachtchi from Russia, Russian champion in 2010, very strong player who often helps out Magnus Carlsen with his preparations. There's Ding Liren, who's the current Chinese champion. He's only 20 years old. And perhaps the most interesting of all, Richard Rapport from Hungary, who's just 17 years old and who's making meteoric progress. In the last year alone, he's gained 100 ELO points, quite extraordinary. And this year, has had some great successes, including, for example, joint first place at the Siegermann tournament in Switzerland. And I thought I'd show you one of his games from there. It's against the English player, Nigel Short, an old friend and colleague of mine, who actually tied first in the tournament. But in this game, Rapport managed to defeat Nigel Short. We joined the game after 34 moves, and, well, if we take a look at the position, Short has the black pieces here. It's hard to imagine that black is worse here. If you look at the structure, well, black has these pawns on the king side and, well, you could say a reasonably healthy pawn majority on the queen side. If black could exchange queens here, then you might say that black is a little bit better. But the queens are on the board, and that makes a massive difference. If we look at the position of the kings, this proves to be decisive. White's king is far better protected than black's. You can see there are 4 pawns in front of white's king, 3 in front of black's, but it's not just that, it's this pawn that causes all the problems. If that pawn were back on f7 to protect the second rank, then black's king would feel a lot more secure. But as it is, black has to protect the second rank and the first rank as well, and that makes life very difficult. I think objectively, probably black should be able to defend. But in practice, well, as we've seen many times, the side that has the initiative very often can win the game. And that's, well, let's see what happened. So Rapport played queen b8, and you can already see what the idea is, that he wants to put his rook to the 8th rank to attack black's king. Okay. Now, black's problem is it's actually very difficult to defend the 8th rank. So, for example, if rook d8, you can just take the pawn on a7. Or if queen d8, well, you take, and because there's no pawn on f7, the rook comes in with check, and you take this pawn with some winning chances. Short decided to play actively. I think if you wait there, well, waiting, as we know, is very, very difficult. It's hard to defend passively. He played f4, which, you know, from a very pure, in a pure sense, damages white's pawns. But actually, these pawns, I know it looks very odd to have triple pawns, but actually very useful because they protect white's king. Not just along the second rank, but also you can see along this diagonal. And this pawn in front protects some very useful squares. Well, it protects g5. Basically, it makes white's king very secure indeed. So, Rapport continued his attack along the 8th rank, and now black has to be very careful indeed. After this, well, already queen g8 is threatened. Well, if queen f7, then queen e5 is winning immediately. So Short has to tread very carefully indeed. He's under a lot of pressure here. Now, if queen g8, then the king can just come up to f6 and is just about okay. But, well, the great thing about white's position is you can kind of move to and fro and just hope to induce a blunder. So again, queen f7 loses to queen e5 check. And after this, well, white is playing cat and mouse here, just waiting and looking for a blunder. So now short protects himself along the f file. And now this is great play from white. Rapport just waits. And I mean, c4 is a useful move just to make sure this pawn majority is, well, just not advancing at all. But it's also a waiting move, and just turning up the heat on black here. One false move and it can be over. For example, rook g7 will be met by rook f8, and that's it. It's tempting to take that pawn, but then queen c6 is very nasty indeed, and suddenly the king is getting checked all over the place. Rook e6 is a strong move, threatening queen d5 mate. So black just has to wait. Short waits, but it's very uncomfortable indeed. And now actually that pawn in some variations can be vulnerable. So Rapport just waits, and again tempting black to take this pawn, but this would lose. Let's have a look, see how. Lots of checks, and then suddenly the position falls apart, and well, white's king is still safe, but you can see that black king is going to be cut to bits in the middle. So short waits, queen c7, and Rapport waits again. And now he finds an absolutely brilliant move. So he hasn't tempted short into taking this f-pawn, but now he plays king h1. Now this is brilliant. This is a brilliant idea. Maybe it's possible to take this pawn now. But you can understand why short was reluctant to play like this when his king is getting checked all over the place. There doesn't seem to be a forced win, but this is very scary indeed. But short understandably just waited again with the same move, queen c7, and it probably seemed to him that there was no real difference here. The queen covers squares here, covers e5, seems solid enough. So what's white's idea? You might, if you want to try and think this one through, then please do take your time, pause the video and try to find white's rather brilliant next move, which was f5. And this just is the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's a lovely move. Well, first of all, king takes, will lose to queen e4, and then taking on g6, and that's game over. So pawn takes, forced, and now brilliant move, absolutely brilliant. Rook g1, threatening queen h8. So the rook makes room for the queen to come across the board. So that's why he played the king to h1, to actually make room for the rook. An extraordinary move. And of course, the rook is going to be able to join in the attack from e1 or d1. Let's see how the game finished. There is absolutely no defense for black. So the king is just going to be checked. Well, king e7 will be met by rook e7, and with a winning attack, actually rather similar to the game. After queen h8, king f5 was played. And you can see how the king is forced to the e-file, and now rook e1 check, deadly move. It's fantastic how this rook kind of bounced around the angles, just like in snooker or billiards. Fantastic to get at the king. And that is checkmate. Well, there was no defense. If the king had gone to d7, for example, then, well, let me give a check here. The king has to go to c8. I give, well, rook e8 is good enough. That looks pretty good to me. So anyway, the game ended after rook e1, king d6, and queen d5 mate. I was just really impressed by the geometry of that and the beauty, actually. I think king h8, excuse me, king h1 rather, is a really, and rook g1 is a really subtle and really beautiful way to win the game. So do join me for the Biel Chess Festival. It starts on Monday the 22nd of July, and you can follow that on playchess.com or on the official site for the Biel Chess Festival.